Hello, everyone, and welcome to our N of Many. I believe we are now in hour 13. We are in hour 13. We are in hour 13 of day one of the CosmoQuest Hangout-a-thon. We unfortunately don't have Jason with us this hour. He had allergies attack, which is something that I think all of us here understand better than we wish. And we wish that Jason didn't understand an allergy attack, but he is suffering right now. But I have an amazing group of people with me. And so while we miss you, Jason, we are going to continue on. Oh, I forgot to give Allie a headphone. My bad. All right, so joining me this hour is on the diagonal, a biological sciences human whose specialty I'm not going to attempt to pronounce. We've all learned earlier today that it is a super cool amphibian of plants, and that's how I'm going to remember it. Can you introduce yourself on the diagonal and pronounce the name of your specialty?
Hello.
Yeah.
I am a person trained in botany generally, and because my area is so specialized and niche, it means that a lot of what I ended up doing was taking more general and broad classes across a wide range of areas. My specific area of specialty would be called evolutionary bryology, but there are very few people actually working in that field at all because it is so niche, and it doesn't have economic implications, more implications for understanding the history of life than anything that would be considered practical for terms of grant writing.
You know, practical and research, you can anticipate what's going to be practical, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be right. And it's been amazing over the years to see where really cool new knowledge has accidentally emerged from. It was people working in radio astronomy who figured out what was necessary to do the technologies used for Wi-Fi. So there's what's sellable as research, and then there's the accidents that revolutionize our understanding of something. And so I'm really like the science that you described earlier today just was deeply pleasing. So figuring out how things evolved from water to land is cool.
Yeah.
Also joining us this hour is Allie Pelfrey, my right-hand human. They're here as someone who comes to us with a English background, which means we can totally nerd out about books, and I trust neither of us to go to bed on time when there's a good book on hand.
Was I over here reading during my break? Yes.
Yes. And we are periodically, like I'm currently deeply waiting for Ali to read a book by Emily
Tesh.
that I just finished because I want to discuss it.
Yeah, it's her turn to bug me to read an Emily Tesh book because I harassed her into reading Emily Tesh's Some Desperate Glory, which is now one of my favorite space operas. It's just lovely, and so now we flipped that around. So now it's my turn.
And we are all three people who love ideas, love books, love the interplay of fiction and fact. And we attempted earlier today to have a conversation about a lot of this in the context of movies with Mika McKinnon, and we did not make it through all the things we intended. I know you had some really cool notes on the diagonal, so I'm going to go to you since you got passed over earlier today and have had the grace to come back and give us another chance to pry interesting things out of your brain tonight.
Well,
So, so
I do tend to over prepare when I'm doing these things, and not knowing that we were getting a guest who had been a science advisor on Stargate and so had lots of cool experience to say, and had done some advising on Moonfall, which regular people here will know means something as well. There was a lot more to be shared in that hour than we had time to share in an hour. But
mistakes
some
get
of the
made.
things we didn't touch on some of the like general questions, and
Yeah.
there are some like when you're writing fiction or reading fiction, how much scientific detail is appropriate?
Yeah.
And I can give a couple of examples at opposite ends of the spectrum. Uh, there is at one end of the spectrum a novel like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, where there is a mention of anatomy and the fact that biological systems decay and electricity is involved somehow in biology, but the focus is on the what if and the what then and what this means for people rather than the science end of things. So the science detail is very sparse, and one of the results of that is all the reader can focus on the characters and the interaction and the story, and as well, it doesn't date itself as
Right.
much as if it had gone into trying to explain things in terms of the science that was happening. At the complete other end, is it Neil Stephen
Yeah.
was the author of 70s, for example?
Yeah. Neil
I read
Stephenson.
his novel Anathem, and I
Yes.
don't know how many people have read Anathem, but that is a book that is heavy on philosophical discussion. The characters have a lot to say, and they stop often to have these discussions. And so there's very little story, there's very little really of the characters as a result. They're burdened so heavily by all of this dialogue and interplay of philosophy. So there's at one end where there's almost no detail, and at the other end, you can belabor detail. And either end can work for a particular audience, but you have to be careful with the particular material you're presenting.
And
I
and
don't,
the thing about an anthem is I have to admit, because of its setting, it had never really occurred to me that they didn't allow the character development as much as the philosophical development, because it is set essentially in a monastery. Um, the concepts are much more complicated than just like monks in
Yeah, and
monastery.
that is pulling on. There is a tradition of what's called a philosophical novel.
Mm-hmm.
It is. I wouldn't go so far to call it a genre. I guess it would be more like a mode. Um, and like the best example I can think of is like the Picture of Dorian Gray is
Oh yeah.
considered a philosophical novel. And those do focus more again on, as is indicated by the name, um, philosophy over
Mm-hmm.
character, and it's like that's not going to be to everyone's taste. I prefer character-driven stories, but that is kind of he's kind of tugging at that mode
Yeah.
to like use characters as vehicles to explore ideas.
And you said
and
something
it's not
earlier.
even something that's,
Go ahead.
it- it's not something that's this author does this and that author does that. I can think of, for instance, Frank Herbert, his novel Dune and most of the Dune series tend to be very light on the scientific detail, even though there are some really huge and well done scientific ideas done in there,
Mm-hmm.
particularly ones that he doesn't explicitly bring out, but he demonstrates through what is happening in the story. His is
Okay.
one of the best series of books on human evolution I've ever seen written. He gets
Yeah,
the ideas right without expressing them.
it's
He
true.
shows them in action. At the other end, I recently finished reading his Destination Void because I honestly didn't remember much about it, and now I know why I don't remember much about it.
Yeah, a
It
lot of
is
his other stuff is just very like kind of pulpy sci-fi. Like,
Although, didn't he also do
it,
White Flag?
it's not that it's pulpy. I've read some of his pulpy stuff like
mhm,
The Green Brain or
yeah,
Lazarus Effect. This is technical detail about the develop how you develop artificial intelligence and what consciousness is.
ooh,
So it is a philosophical novel, but it is almost exclusively the philosophy while the characters try to problem solve. We need
mhm.
an AI to save our butts as we're sailing in this colony ship, and all the organic brains have broken down, so we need to build an artificial one.
Mhm.
And
And I get the feeling he wrote the novel specifically because he had a clever idea for a final line and then wrote this novel to get to that line.
As you do, right? You kind of you mentioned this a little bit earlier on the diagonal about like things that are overly detailed get dated very quickly.
yeah.
And it reminded me of like a writing class I took that was about technology in writing, so kind of adjacent to what we're discussing here. And it's the advice that really stuck with me was like when you're, especially if you're writing in like a contemporary setting, if you're describing things like phones and computers and whatnot, it's better to kind of talk around them and talk about like how the characters use them and don't go into too much detail because technology advances so fast that it gets very dated very quickly, and so your story's just not it's gonna like not resonate with people eventually.
Or it may lose context with an audience. I've
Yes.
just started reading Neuromancer, and the opening line describes
Right.
the sky as looking like a
Yeah.
television with no channel,
And
you know,
that is one
static.
of my absolute favorite books, and I do think in some regards it does hold up. Um,
Hmm.
but it's like it is very interesting to like show it to like say a younger audience. I know some of the kids I was substitute teaching, they were having to read that for a class, and they did not understand that opening line at all. And of course, one of them comes up to me and is like, "You're old. Do you know what this means?"
Oh my.
Yeah, teenagers are funny. I love them.
So, I mean, this brings one of the things that I struggle with is there's so many good stories that convey amazing ideas, but they just predicted technology that's slightly sideways of the direction it actually went. One of the ones that just kind of gets me is Fahrenheit 451 because one of the premises in it is as people get consumed by nationalized media that is everyone is being drawn into the same stories at the same time.
And not
And
just the same stories, but just very rote, very
yeah.
superficial stories that are like intended to numb people.
And and we're having this problem, but it had evolved in a very different way where we're instead dealing with micro content, a diversification that actually removes a lot of the concepts of the zeitgeist. And and one of the premises in the books is you have the wall that is your television, and if you're wealthy enough, you add additional walls. And instead, what we're doing is we have our individual handheld screens that are becoming VR headsets where we're each climbing into our own personal content. And I see this with my husband and I. In the living room, we have two chairs that are at right angles to each other, so we can always see each other. But then we have monitors that we each have attached to our side tables, and I'm usually consuming one set of content, he's consuming another set of content, and I'm playing video games, and he's looking at guitar things, and so we're both in our personalized experiences side by side instead of in a shared experience, which was the future that Ray Bradbury envisioned. So we have that same problem of society losing its intellectual engagement as content gets watered down to contain less and less things that inspire thinking. But the way we got there is radically different. And so it's just sort of like, you were so right and so wrong. And it's a challenge.
I think about that. I think about a similar thing to that in the sense that, like, I think about 1984
Yeah.
and the telescreens, and the one thing that Orwell didn't get was that people would happily invite the telescreens into their homes if they provide convenience, and that's basically what we're doing with like Echo Dots and things in
We're,
house automation and whatnot.
we are still getting some things starting to show up that he did predict, though, such
Oh yeah,
as
definitely.
having the time where they broadcast rage bait and everyone screams at the telescreen.
Oh yeah, the 5 minutes hate.
Which is something that seems to be the point of a lot of social media now. It's just there so that people can get angry at it, and there's no other reason for it to exist.
I'm okay. My audio. Oh shit! Where
Sorry,
did that
I
come
did
from?
it again.
I don't see where I did. I did it on my computer.
No, I.
Oh, hold on. I have accidentally launched music.
No, I did that.
Okay.
Sorry, we are having technical difficulties. It should be on.
There it is. I found it. It had gotten shrunk.
I'm sorry.
No, it's
Once
our
again,
headphones
it's
is
the problem.
occasionally-
No, you can't hear the music on stream. Thank God, because we would get slapped with a.
DRM.
Yeah, we would get slapped with a cease and desist, and it would be bad. But I have my earbuds in, and these are the earbuds I use at home. And if I accidentally press a button on the side of them, it summons my my
iTunes
Apple
playlist.
Music
Yeah.
app and whatever I was listening to last, which we went over this a couple of segments ago, is Sabrina Carpenter. So I get her like crooning in my ear, which is a little startling. So I apologize for that.
So I'm sorry. You were saying before we were attacked by the ghost of music playlists past on the diagonal.
I had finished what I was saying. It was a well-timed interruption.
Okay.
But I can launch a new topic.
Yes, please.
That's related. Another thing that, if you read a lot of science fiction, consume a lot of various media, is that certain stories tend to get told again and again.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're done in such a different way that you wonder, are they really the same thing? But often it's a reflection of the time. Since we're 5 years past 2020, mentioned that I recently read Earth Abides, which is a novel that starts with a global pandemic that kills nearly everyone. I'm getting this sense, although they don't give the statistics because of it, that about 1 in a million people survives.
Yeah.
But they don't cover the discovery of loved ones' bodies. They don't cover where are all the bodies. They don't cover a lot of things that you would expect in that sort of novel. It was groundbreaking for its time, and you can read it and see, oh, that influenced a lot of media, film, novels, and so on at the time. But it's almost halfway through the book before the small community we follow has to find a new source of water because it's no longer running from the tap. And there's only one moment where they have to sort of pass judgment on someone and decide whether he lives or dies. And there's no attempt at building, agriculture again, or any of the things you might expect. It's a very optimism of the 50s story with occasional sidesteps into eugenics and gladly spraying DDT on everything, which hasn't aged well because we hadn't yet had Rachel Carson's Silent Spring. But then you hear this same story of a global pandemic nearly wiping out everyone, and we have to rebuild in the 1970s on British television with Terry Nation's Survivors, which has a very different feel.
Mm-hmm.
The first three episodes were following what happens as the pandemic hits and how each of the people who will become a main character for at least the first season experiences loss and panic and confusion. And there are moments throughout where it asks the question, well, what about a person who is disabled? How are they
Yeah.
going to survive in this apocalypse? Or what happens if you come across someone who is taking antipsychotic medication? What happens if all of your chickens become diseased, or if you caught fish from the river and served it up and it was contaminated? And there are some moments which are just soul crushing in some of the first season and a half episodes because you've come to love characters and it is brutally realistic. A
Yeah.
very different feel from uh, Earth
50s.
Abides, and
Yeah.
a series that I recommend with caution because I was watching it when 2020 hit, and I had to stop watching.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
bleak. It is bleak. I think it's interesting when you say like optimism of the 50s because if you do some digging in like 50s and 60s science fiction, you'll find a lot of stuff that is quite dark and quite bleak. A lot of Ray Bradbury stuff is very very dark. I have been working my way through a collection of James Tiptree Jr.'s stuff, and her stuff is really dark.
Oh man. Things I want to add to my reading list, but won't.
Yeah, don't read the Screwfly Solution
Oh,
before
okay.
bed. Don't do that.
Okay.
Um,
There's certain books that friends don't like let friends read if they're not in the right headspace.
Oh, there are books I've read that I'm glad I read, but I wouldn't recommend them to another human being.
oh, yeah. I think we all have some of those, right? That it's like, well, I read that once.
Yeah.
Yeah, J.G. Ballard, I've read one of his novels, and I've seen a film adaptation of one of his novels, and I don't know that I can recommend him as a writer to anyone, although he's very deep at times and he knows what
Hmm.
he's doing. His writing is extremely disquieting at its weakest and downright gut-wrenching at its
Yeah.
strongest.
That's how I felt about Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale.
Oh yeah.
But I had never read it, and for some reason I decided to pick it up in January 2017. Um, and it took me 6 months to finish it because it gave me so much anxiety that I threw up a couple of times. And it's very very dark, and it is more rooted in actual like real life experiences more than I expected it to be, and
Oh.
it was just deeply chilling. And I'm glad I read it. I will never read it again.
The book that like I know I should reread is Mary Norris Russell's The Sparrow. This is a book that I was reading on a transatlantic flight from Boston to London, and I couldn't put it down. And I got to London and I couldn't put it down. And I was taking the train from Heathrow to Paddington Station, which is a fairly long train ride, and openly crying, like not ugly crying, but like tears going down my face, reading this heart crushing book that is taking my soul and shredding it into pieces, and laughing at what I had thought of society and exploration and first contact, and mocking me with how terribly wrong it could go when everything is still going right. And and yeah, it was beautiful, it was meaningful, it made me think about things I hadn't thought about before. Like, the church has so much money that one of the premises is early in the book that isn't a spoiler is while the rest of the earth was debating how to go out and meet the alien civilization that had been detected, the Catholic Church just sent missionaries because it could afford to. And okay, that has lived with me rent free. And then another book that had me just openly crying, but at least I was at home in my own house while it snowed. The Doomsday Book by Connie Willis. It is a time travel book that looks at the Black Plague. And the time traveler didn't mean to be there during the Black Plague. And I learned things about the Black Plague that made me realize just what humanity has had to live through. And I'm glad I was reading that in the early 20 teens and not in the late 20 teens.
I have a question
Yeah.
for both of you. So we're talking about books that we would only read once because they were so gut-wrenching. What's a book that absolutely gutted you emotionally that you would read all over again for the experience? And for me, that's definitely Some Desperate Glory by Emily Tesh. It's a beautiful, all gas, no brakes space opera that deals with things like escaping a cult,
Yeah.
deprogramming from being raised in a cult. It it wrestles with the idea of genocide because there's the whole premise is that the human race has almost been entirely wiped out by this alien race who uses this gigantic advanced supercomputer called the Wisdom that runs probability. It's just a big giant
It's a
advanced
quantum computer.
yeah, it's a quantum computer. That's I'm tired. And it spits out information that the human race is a threat to their civilization, and so they wipe them out.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting because you get all of this from the point of view of a teenage girl who has been raised in this cult, and
Fight.
she, it's a cult of humans living in a giant asteroid.
Yeah.
And then she escapes, and it's all about her like learning that the truth is a lot more complicated. And it was just one of those like I couldn't put down. It made me cry. It stressed me out, and I want to pick it up and do it all over again.
It's on my list of I need to reread this and think it through. There's certain books that have to be reread. I think the books that like took me on a journey and spit me out that most fit what you're talking about, unfortunately, are absolutely not sci-fi. So like Toni Morris's The Bluest Eyes. There's reasons that book is
Yeah, I
so
think just
acclaimed.
about everything by Toni Morrison would be on my list.
That book in particular,
Yeah.
just like, okay. There, yeah.
What about you on the diagonal?
I'm thinking, and I'm having a hard time remembering which really good sci-fi novels were the ones that really hit me. I can think of some films, definitely.
Oh, go for it. We're not
Yeah,
just
no,
talking
we're
about
not
books
picky.
here.
Cloud Atlas would probably top the list of ones that were really emotional, impacting, that I would watch again. And in fact, I have watched it many, many times. The themes are set in a series of intertwined stories. I think there are 7 different stories. And in the original novel it's based on, you start with one story, which then transitions to another story with other characters that is related to the previous one, but is in a different location and at a different time. And then that transitions to another story and another story, another story. So you get half of 6 different stories, and then you get the 7th story in total, and then it begins unpacking back the way it came. Well,
I
for the
love that.
film, instead of doing it all nested like that, they have them all concurrent. And because of certain themes of the books, they have the lead actors playing multiple roles, so they show up in the various time periods as different characters, or sometimes the same character at a different age because it was the same character. And if I were going to try to explain what genre the movie is, sci-fi would be the best I could do, but it's also historical fiction and noir and
Yeah.
adventure, and if I were going to try to express themes, the best I could say is humanity, because it that's what the film really is trying to get at, is
Yeah.
what does it mean to be human, and the fact that we're all human and why we're all human, and none of the distinctions between different kinds of human actually matter.
And what gets me is the authors that I'm hearing stayed with all of us are authors that it was hitting us in the heart and in the intellect. It was that combination that made us like rethink things, that made something a great book. And this is one of the challenges of sci-fi is it often has to get so many things right because any one thing wrong can pull you out of it. One of the things I love about Moon is a Harsh Mistress is the science was done loosey-goosey enough or right enough that it didn't break down over time badly enough to affect the story. And the story is one that makes you think so hard about themes around colonialism, themes around enslavement, and all of these different how we treat each other in a capitalist society, that you keep going with the books even when things go slightly sideways with the physics. Has there ever been something that was just like so painfully good and then it just like, no, I have to stop now because the science was just that like suddenly wrong?
I have a high
Sorry, I'm in.
tolerance for bad movies, so there are
Same. Yeah.
plenty that I could say the science was bad, but I wouldn't say that I necessarily stopped watching it because of that, even though I wanted to hit my
I
head on something as a
I
result of
love
seeing it.
I love bad movies. Um, I love movies that are bad on purpose and are like fun bad. You know, it's like Independence Day is one of my favorite movies. Is it a good movie? I don't know. I think from some angles it is a great movie, and from others it is. I don't know. Again, like I don't have an answer for that. I love it, and also I just want to say I think I get people thinking that because I love movies with bad science that I don't know that they have bad science. And I'm like, no, 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 trust me. I know. I know. But
Yes.
that hasn't stopped me yet.
There have been a few times, especially unfortunately, I think this has led to why my husband doesn't like watching TV with me, where like I can forgive the big sins, but then the little ones cause me to literally shout at the television.
That's what it is, right? It's always the little detail. Like Pacific Rim, one of my favorite movies. I love it so much. And it's kind of like it reminds me of like a panel from an Atomic Robo comic where it's like, why do we even have a square cubed law? You know, and it's just like giant robots punching giant monsters. It's Guillermo del Toro. It's beautiful, and it's like I can accept the giant robots and the giant monsters. And then they say that this robot with a big ass digital display inside its cockpit is all analog.
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
just like, what? No, no. And that's what just kind of temporarily yeeted me out of the movie the first time I watched it. Have I watched it like 40 times since then? Yes, because giant robots punching giant monsters, evergreen. Uh, but yeah,
That
every time they're like, the robot's analog, I'm like, no.
that's the kind of mistake that I think, well, someone just said something and the character didn't know what the word meant.
Hmm.
Where I can think of a couple of examples now where the story was completely ruined because a key point of the plot hinged on something that was factually incorrect.
Oh no.
Uh, a
Yeah,
a
yeah.
story where a a space pilot, a interplanetary space pilot. He's been doing this for at least 10 years at this point. He's an experienced person traveling between planets and stars, and he realizes that they are not in a real world at partway through the story because there are three stars in the sky, and you can't have a triple star system. And I'm going to, what, you don't even know about Alpha Centauri?
Yeah.
You don't know about all the triple star systems we already know about in the present day? Uh, or uh, the one where they try to explain lycanthropy and give it a scientific explanation because the full moon has more gravity than any other phase of the moon.
Yeah, and it's just like you don't need to give a scientific explanation for lycanthropy. It's a werewolf movie.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
they turn into werewolves on the full moon. That's it.
Yeah.
Um, that I think that's something that I have like mixed opinions on, because I think any concept can be executed well, but like when the whole idea of like ascribing like hard science to fantasy things in order to like ground them in reality is like I don't think that that's impossible to do well, but I still haven't personally seen it done well,
Yeah.
you know? And I'm sure there's a writer out there who has done it well or will do it well, but I again like, and if any of you like know of someone who has done that in like a really neat way, please let me know. I would love to read their stuff.
There are authors who do a really good job of putting science ideas into their books without making the science ideas the point
Yeah.
and also not belaboring them. And the
Hmm.
person I think of most for this is Douglas Adams,
Mm-hmm.
who presents a lot of really cool science ideas, like the fact that it's unlikely you're going to be picked up by a passing spaceship at random because space is big, really big. And even though it's uh, a fairly silly and humorous set of novels he wrote,
Yeah.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy still has a lot of really good science in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You can. The book most recently that falls into the absolutely ridiculous, oh my goodness, they actually contemplated the science, is John Scalzi's When the Moon Hits Your Eye. And the premise that makes absolutely no sense is one day the moon turns into cheese. Just suddenly the moon is cheese. Follow the physics from there. And then yeah,
I love absurd things like that.
and Phil Plait was involved, who's a friend and a PhD astrophysicist who like worked on Supernova 1987A and likes to think about absurdist things and they contemplate. Oh, okay, you stopped it. All right, we're good. Sorry, the music. Suddenly, we were attacked again by ghosts
Sabrina
of
Carpenter.
iTunes past. Um, and so like there's the idea that if the moon turned into cheese and it's in a vacuum, what happens next? They actually explore that to its fullest conclusions. I highly recommend this book.
I need to read it. I love things that like take an absurd concept, like the moon turning into cheese,
Yeah.
and just take it to its most ridiculous logical conclusion. You know, just like get really, really weird with it.
And it's narrated by Will Wheaton. So if you do audiobooks, it's I was cleaning my attic while listening to it, and at one point it was just like, I'm just gonna sit on the floor and laugh and shake my head while we get through this scene because nothing else is happening right now. Um, highly recommend.
I just wanna say that we currently are sitting at 198 paid members on our Patreon, and I would love to get that to a nice even 200 by
Yeah,
the end of
that
the
would be
night.
amazing.
I
Sorry, you were
can
going to say on the
concur
diagonal?
about I can concur about Will Wheaton audiobooks. That's how I experienced the Kaiju Preservation Society.
Yes.
It was his he gladly read that, and he clearly enjoyed reading it as well. That is a novel that, as I understand it, the author
Did not
had
mean
a
to write.
project that fell through, and then had to come up with something else. But his uh, publisher, his editor, was very understanding. But then something came to him, and he wrote it very quickly, and it was completely different from anything he'd been planning to write because it was
That's
extremely positive and upbeat and kind of filled with wonder, which makes Will Wheaton's reading perfect to fit the
yeah,
style of the writing.
yeah. It is the accidental book we all needed, and it came out of the pandemic in a way that just it was the book we all needed. It made me sit
And
on the
is
floor and laugh.
another book that gets the science right enough and hedges around the other science in a way that doesn't make it too technical or
Yeah.
too reliant on the science in future working the right way.
And like a lot of Scalzi books, it's adults being adults in the best and worst ways possible. And there's so many books where it's like teenager, college student, all this sort of stuff. And this book isn't that. It's adults being morons in the ways only adults can be.
Well, in any kaiju film, it's the kids who are smart and the adults do dumb things.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that was true to the genre.
It's true.
And having lived at a boarding school, that tends to be how things play out. The kids tend to be a lot more level-headed than the adults in a crisis. It's really interesting to watch.
I can see that. Having taught teacher professional development workshops. Yeah, yeah, I can see that. So we're down to just a few more minutes. If someone came to you and said, "I want a book that makes me want to learn science, any science, pick a science. I don't care. Give me a book that makes me feel like the universe is awesome." What book would you recommend?
I'm trying to think. I don't know, it's not exactly upbeat, but I would say Leviathan Wakes, the first
Oh, the
Expanse
first
book.
Expanse book.
Because it somehow manages to be very, to present this very, what I feel is a realistic view of the future, but still maintain, that sense of, wonder and doing the right thing
Yeah.
that I really love in, like, in my space science
opera.
fiction.
Yeah.
And which, it checks out that that's my favorite book series because the authors were heavily inspired by Mass Effect and Babylon 5, which
That checks out.
everyone knows are my two favorite things. And Mass Effect was inspired by Babylon 5, so everything goes back to Babylon 5 for me. If we're talking about a TV show, Babylon 5, yes, would be that for me.
Not as much science. The science of the new version of Battlestar Galactica, they actually got a lot of that right. That was cool.
That is not a happy show.
No, nothing happy there. Nothing happy at all. Okay, on the diagonal, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking of books like Three Body Problem as one that really gets into a lot of the science, astronomy, physics, biology of discovering, contacting, and then responding to first contact.
That,
Um,
yeah.
I'm trying to think if I can think of something earlier than that. I don't know ones that would necessarily lead to science.
There was a lot of aeronautical engineering stuff from Asimov. Um, I mean, Moon is a harsh mistress to me is always sort of the argument for why you don't farm in the desert. Um, and nowadays, Seven Eves by Neil Stephenson, which has come up in other contexts, that's sort of the one of, oh, okay. And then before that was Lucifer's Hammer, was another much earlier one that got a lot of the science of, oh no, an asteroid hit and really bad stuff happened. Um, and so some of those with what are the consequences of disasters really hit me when I was younger. Um, and then of course there's like the
If I were
Andromeda
going to
Strain.
recommend something that just made you really want to explore and think about a particular field of science, I might recommend Octavia Butler's Xenogenesis
I
trilogy,
love that series.
Um,
or the series. I think it's on HBO Max right now. Scavenger's Reign, which is an animated sci-fi series that explores the uh, in large part the biology of a hostile alien world.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, that one's on my, if I don't watch it soon, Fraser will come through the internet and force me to watch it list.
I am so behind on my TV viewing.
Yeah, same, same.
Just kind of, it just, everything's depressing out in the world. So I'm
Mm.
like fully nested watching my like cheesy medical procedurals. Um,
So as this starts to come to an end, I want to ask, what are you currently consuming? And I will admit, I just finished, I don't know how it is, I managed to forget the name of a book within 30 seconds of finishing reading it. I
Let me pull up my Storify to see if I'm actually reading some sci-fi right now.
I just finished an Emily novel,
Tesh.
Tesh novel. My brain is so bad. The Incandescent. It is a fantasy book, and then before that, I did Exodus by Peter Hamilton, and I actually that is not on my list of things that I'm going to recommend. So I'm going to say I read that, and I'm not going to recommend it. But
Yeah.
before that was Folded Sky, The Machine, the entire Elizabeth Bear White Space series, and I need to like sit down and write a monograph on this series because it has concepts in it that made me feel very uncomfortable, and that's a good thing in a book. All right, on
Sorry.
the diagonal, what have you been consuming lately?
The recent ones I've finished are Destination Void, which I mentioned earlier, which is an extremely technical book about developing artificial intelligence and the question of what gives humans consciousness. And I don't think they came up with any satisfactory answers. And then Earth Abides, which is rather dated, and I think there are other books that do a better job. The two books I'm currently in are Neuromancer, which I've been meaning to read for a long time, and
Yeah.
I'm only partway through that. And then not sci-fi, but sci-fi adjacent is Terry Pratchett's Thud, a Discworld novel, which I had not yet read.
Terry Pratchett is always comfortable while also teaching you uncomfortable ideas, and that is sometimes the best combination. Go ahead.
I was going through my Storify, and I've only read one sci-fi novel this year.
That's
When I
okay.
get stressed out, I like just bury myself in romance novels, and that's what I've been doing all year. But I read And I really, really love this one. It's called The Daughter of Dr. Moreau. It's by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. And it's kind of like it's a reimagining of the island of Dr. Moreau, which because I'm a morbid weirdo, that's my favorite H.G. Wells story, and has been my favorite
really
H.G.
good.
Wells story since I was 8 years old. That's the first time I read it. Now
no.
you understand a lot of things about me. Um, but so this is like a beautiful retelling of that, but like it imagines that he had this daughter, and it's from her point of view, and you get all the hybrids, you get all the like the monsters, and it mixes like science fiction and gothic romance, and I'm not talking about like romances and love stories. I'm talking
Yeah.
like as in the genre of gothic
Yeah.
romance. And it's just this beautiful atmospheric book that it's really creepy. There's a lot of body horror in it, so it's like if that's not your thing, maybe don't read it. I love body horror. um, so it's just, yeah, that's probably like one of my favorite books that I've read this year.
And it just got added to my to-read list.
Yeah, all of her stuff's good. She writes
Okay.
in many genres, and all of her books are good.
All right. So the last hour of tonight is story time. It's how we always end our Saturday nights. And this year, we're just going to be walking on Mars. So join me in just a few minutes for an excerpt from John Carpenter's, oh man, I forgot the name.
John Carpenter. John Carter?
John Carter's Mars Chronicles.
Hold, please.
The book is on the shelf. My greatest failing is I don't do proper nouns well. The part of my brain that like should hold proper nouns is like, no, I will not. I cannot. I don't know if it's related to my dyslexia. Proper nouns do not stay in my brain.
So I assume you're talking about the novel by Edgar Rice Burroughs about
Yes.
John Carter
Yeah.
and one of his Mars adventures.
Yes. Edgar Rice Burroughs. And I did reread Lost Worlds recently. It's just a little novella. It did not hold up to time, which made me sad because I really liked it when I was little and less civilized. So John Carter of Mars, the first 5 novels in a giant book that I found at a science fiction convention, and it had to come home with me. So I will be back in just a few minutes, and we are going to step off world, as sometimes is required.
Yes.
So don't go anywhere. We will be right back.
Bye.